Every morning or evening, the same familiar routine begins. You step into the shower. The warm water hits your skin. The steam rises slowly around you, and for a brief moment, everything feels calm, predictable, and safe. The shower is supposed to be a place where the body loosens, where tension releases, where sensations soften. But what most people don't realize is that this comforting environment can hide one of the most aggressive triggers for hemorrhoid inflammation. Something so simple, so automatic, so deeply ingrained in your daily routine that you may never have questioned it. And yet, it could be the exact reason why your veins stay swollen, your discomfort keeps returning, and your pain worsens overnight. Before we dive into the science and the specific habit that doctors warn about, take a moment to think about how your body feels right after a shower. That warmth lingering on the skin, that slight sensitivity in certain areas, that impression that your body has relaxed, even though internally something completely different may be happening. Under the surface, far away from sight, the heat changes the behavior of your blood vessels, the structure of your skin, the response of your pelvic muscles, and the pressure inside the veins that run through your lower abdomen and anal region. And in people who already struggle with hemorrhoids, these changes are not harmless. They are the spark that sets off a chain of reactions that quietly worsen the condition through the day and intensify pain hours later. You might feel fine at first. You might even feel relieved. That's what makes this habit so deceptive. It disguises itself as comfort, as cleanliness, as a harmless part of your hygiene routine. But once the shower ends and the day begins, the consequences start building without warning. Some people feel a sudden heaviness in the lower region. Others notice a subtle burning sensation hours later. Some feel a swelling that comes and goes. Others only realize something is wrong when it becomes painful to sit, walk, or go to the bathroom. And many spend months or years trying to fix everything else: diet, hydration, exercise, creams, medications, without realizing the real damage was happening inside their own shower. Before continuing, if you want to truly understand your body and learn how small adjustments can transform your digestion, your circulation, and your overall well-being, take a moment to subscribe to Relief Health. There is so much your body has been trying to tell you, and when you finally hear it, everything changes. When you step under warm water, your veins expand. This dilation is natural. Heat opens blood vessels to regulate temperature. But in one specific area of your body, that dilation becomes amplified. The veins responsible for hemorrhoids are extremely reactive to temperature. They fill faster, swell faster, and stay expanded for longer. For someone who already has inflammation or sensitivity in the region, that expansion is not just a normal response, it's an overload, a sudden surge of blood that increases pressure inside the veins, stretches their walls, and pushes them past a threshold they cannot tolerate daily. And that's only the first layer. The skin and mucosa around the anal area are also different from the rest of the body. They're thinner, more delicate, and more vulnerable to heat. When exposed to hot water, especially water directed toward the area, the protective layer weakens. The tissue loses moisture, becomes more sensitive, more reactive, more prone to micro-damage. And because the shower feels soothing, most people assume the heat is helping, when in reality it's lowering the tissue's defenses for the rest of the day. All of this happens quietly. The shower ends, the towel dries the skin, the clothes go on, and life continues. But inside, the veins remain engorged, the tissue stays irritated, the muscles tense reflexively, circulation slows, and as the hours pass, the body tries to recover from a stimulus that it simply cannot handle every single day. That is the invisible part of the story, the part most people never connect to the pain they feel hours later. The swelling you notice at night, the discomfort you feel at work, the burning sensation after using the bathroom, the heaviness at the end of the afternoon, the sudden flares that seem to appear without logic. None of them begin when you think they begin. They start in the shower, not because of the water temperature alone, not because of hygiene alone, but because of one specific action, one habit, done by millions of people inside the shower every day, without knowing that this single movement disrupts the entire balance of the lower veins, intensifies inflammation, and worsens hemorrhoids overnight. And once you recognize that habit and you stop doing it, your body finally gets the chance to calm down, heal, and return to its natural state. The cycle breaks, the inflammation decreases, the swelling fades, and the pain that seemed inevitable begins to disappear. But before we reveal exactly what that habit is, we need to understand why the shower environment makes your veins more vulnerable than any other moment of the day, and why your body reacts so strongly to something that seems so harmless. Inside the shower, your body enters a state that feels natural and harmless, but physiologically it becomes more reactive than at almost any other moment of the day. The warm water softens tissues, relaxes muscles, thins the outer layer of the skin, and accelerates blood flow. All of that is supposed to be therapeutic, and for most parts of the body it is, but not for the veins connected to hemorrhoids. These veins, located deep in the lower pelvic region, behave differently from the vessels in your legs, arms, or face. They have thinner walls, less structural support, and a much higher sensitivity to pressure, heat, and friction. When you step into the shower, the rise in temperature begins a chain reaction that quietly prepares these veins to become overloaded. The heat signals your vessels to expand, allowing blood to circulate more freely to regulate temperature. But the veins in the anal and rectal region don't just expand. They swell aggressively, they swell fast, and they stay swollen longer than normal. It's as if this area of the body remains stuck in a heating cycle that the rest of the body has already recovered from. The warm environment also relaxes the muscles that support the area, including the pelvic floor. And while relaxation sounds beneficial, it creates an unexpected vulnerability. When those muscles relax too much while the veins are filling too quickly, the region loses its structural support. Blood begins to pool, circulation slows, the veins become stagnant, and this stagnation becomes the foundation for swelling, discomfort, and pressure, even before the harmful habit in the shower is applied. The shower also affects the mucosa, the delicate tissue that lines the anal canal. Unlike regular skin, the mucosa is thin, sensitive, and designed for a completely different purpose. It does not tolerate heat the same way the rest of your body does. Under hot water, it becomes softer, more fragile, less protected. The natural barrier that keeps the area lubricated and resilient is temporarily weakened. And once that barrier is gone, the tissue becomes vulnerable to micro-injuries, irritation, and inflammation. This vulnerability only deepens with time. The longer you stand under the warm water, the more the tissue absorbs that heat and the more reactive it becomes. By the time your body reaches that familiar moment of full relaxation, when the water hits your shoulders, the steam surrounds your face and your muscles loosen. The veins in the lower region are already in a completely opposite state. They are tense, swollen, engorged, and working far harder than they should. Most people never feel this happening. They only feel the aftermath. The swelling that shows up later in the day, the itching that appears at night, the burning sensation after using the bathroom, the pressure that becomes worse than usual, they assume it begins randomly. But it begins here, in the very environment that feels most soothing. And to make matters worse, the heat also tricks the nervous system. When the water opens blood vessels, nerve endings become more sensitive, more alert. They magnify sensations for hours afterward. A simple movement, a small friction, even normal bowel activity becomes amplified. This heightened sensitivity is not a sign of weakness. It is simply your body responding to an overload of stimulation that the shower has created. What makes this situation so problematic is the combination of these three factors happening simultaneously: swelling veins, weakened tissue, and heightened nerve sensitivity. Together, they create a perfect environment for hemorrhoids to worsen, even before the damaging habit is added to the equation. The shower becomes a moment where the body is relaxed, but the veins are overwhelmed, where the mind feels calm, but the tissue is vulnerable, where everything seems harmless, but internally the pressure rises. That is why this time of day is so critical. And that is why what you choose to do or not do in the shower has such a dramatic impact on your symptoms hours later. As we move to the next part, the picture becomes clearer, because now that you understand how exposed the region becomes in the shower, we can finally reveal the specific habit the one movement millions of people make without a second thought, that pushes these already vulnerable veins past their limit and worsens hemorrhoids overnight. Now that you understand how vulnerable the lower veins become inside the shower, it's time to reveal the habit that doctors warn about, the one action that silently transforms a moment of comfort into a source of swelling, irritation, and overnight inflammation. It's something many people do instinctively, believing it helps with cleanliness or relieves discomfort. Some do it because it feels soothing. Others do it simply because no one ever told them not to. The habit is directing hot water, or worse, a pressurized handheld shower spray, directly at the anal area. At first it seems harmless. The warmth feels relaxing, and the water feels like it is cleaning more deeply. Some people use the jet to ease itching. Others aim the stream because they assume the heat will reduce tension, but internally something completely different is happening. The hot water and the pressure of the stream combine to create a reaction that the veins in that area simply cannot tolerate. When hot water hits the anal region directly, the veins expand rapidly. They don't just open, they balloon. The heat forces an immediate rush of blood into the area, filling vessels that were already dilated from the shower environment. It's like sending a surge of pressure into a system that is already at its limit. The walls of the veins stretch beyond what they are prepared to handle. The tissue surrounding them becomes engorged and heavy. Circulation slows down even more, trapping blood in a region that desperately needs the opposite. The pressure of the water adds another layer of damage. Even if the stream doesn't feel particularly strong, the anal mucosa is extremely thin. It isn't designed to absorb direct impact. When the water hits the area, it removes the natural protective barrier, a thin layer of moisture and lubrication that shields the tissue from friction and bacteria. Without this barrier, the mucosa becomes raw, exposed, and vulnerable. Micro-tears form easily. Small irritations that would normally heal within hours become inflamed. And because the water is hot, these small injuries swell almost immediately. The sensation of relief that some people feel in the moment is deceptive. The warmth masks the irritation. The water disguises the beginning of inflammation. And because the nerve endings temporarily relax, it seems like the heat is helping. But once the shower is over and the tissue cools down, the true effects appear. The veins remain swollen long after the water stops hitting them. The tissue, now unprotected, responds to friction from walking, sitting, or wiping. The pelvic floor muscles tense reflexively as a protective response, increasing internal pressure even more. This is why discomfort appears hours later, not instantly. It's why people often think the flare-up came out of nowhere, when in reality it began right there in the shower. The direct stream of hot water forces blood into the veins, weakens the tissue, and creates a pocket of trapped inflammation that grows throughout the day. The pressure builds from the inside, and the region becomes overwhelmed long before you even realize something is happening. Imagine this sequence happening every time you shower. Morning after morning, night after night. A cycle in which the tissue is repeatedly irritated before it has any chance to recover. A pattern where every attempt your body makes to heal is undone by a few seconds of hot water aimed at the wrong place. And because showers are part of daily life, this habit becomes one of the most consistent and most damaging triggers for recurrent hemorrhoids. The shocking part is that many people adopt this habit with the intention of helping themselves. It feels hygienic, it feels soothing, it feels like the right thing to do, but the body responds in the exact opposite way. The veins swell, the tissue weakens, the inflammation deepens, and the cycle continues, silently, predictably, and relentlessly. That's why understanding this habit is so important, because once you remove it, the body begins to behave differently. The veins stop receiving that sudden surge of heat and pressure. Circulation stabilizes. The tissue is no longer stripped of its natural protection. The inflammation loses its fuel, and for the first time in a long time the region has space to calm down and heal. But to fully understand why this habit has such a powerful impact, we need to look deeper into what happens inside the veins and tissues after the shower, and why the pain increases throughout the day instead of immediately. That mechanism becomes clear in the next part, where we explore how this action drives pressure higher, slows circulation, and triggers a delayed wave of swelling that lasts for hours. The moment the hot water stream hits the anal region, a reaction begins that your body tries and fails to control. It starts with a rapid dilation of the veins. Heat forces these vessels to open faster than they can regulate, and because the area is already naturally sensitive, the dilation becomes exaggerated. Blood rushes in quickly, filling every small branch of the hemorrhoidal plexus, overwhelming a system that is already delicate under normal conditions. But the real problem happens after the initial rush. When the mucosa is weakened and the veins are full, the tissue loses its ability to contract and stabilize. The swelling doesn't simply happen at the surface, it builds deep inside, creating a hidden pressure that grows with time. Even after you turn off the water and step out of the shower, the body remains in the state that the heat created. The area stays warm, the veins stay open, and the blood stays trapped. This trapped blood becomes the source of the discomfort you feel later. Hemorrhoidal veins are supposed to fill and empty continuously, like a soft cushion that adjusts to movement. But once they become engorged, they lose that flexibility. They stiffen, they stay enlarged, and that enlargement starts pressing on surrounding tissue, triggering an inflammatory response that continues long after the shower is over. Your nervous system recognizes this imbalance. It senses the expansion and reacts instinctively, tightening the pelvic floor muscles in an attempt to create stability around the swollen veins. But that protective tension becomes part of the problem. When the pelvic muscles tighten, they decrease the space available for blood to circulate. This makes the area even more congested. The pressure increases internally, and because the veins can't drain properly, the swelling becomes more intense throughout the day. This is the reason the pain often appears hours after the shower, not during it. At the exact moment when you think the shower relieved tension, the body is actually entering a state of deeper stress. The tissue is warm, vulnerable, and swollen. The muscles around it are tightening slowly. And as you go about your day, sitting, bending, walking, digesting, every movement adds a layer of pressure to an area that is already struggling to recover. Digestion itself becomes an amplifier. As food moves through the intestines, the blood flow naturally shifts to support the digestive process. This increases temperature internally and creates subtle pressure in the pelvic region. Normally, this isn't a problem, but when the veins are already engorged from the shower habit, digestion becomes a trigger that intensifies inflammation. You might feel a sense of fullness, heaviness, warmth, or throbbing, all consequences of the cycle that began under the stream of hot water. Then there is the moment of bowel movement. If the mucosa is already sensitive and inflamed, even a normal stool can feel harsh. The tissue that lost its protective barrier in the shower is more prone to friction. Micro-tears that formed from the hot water and pressure worsen with the slightest strain. The swelling increases. The nerves fire more aggressively. The discomfort that felt small becomes sharp, persistent, and difficult to ignore. And it all happens so gradually that it seems disconnected from the shower itself. Hours pass. You sit at work. You walk. You eat. You move. And by the end of the day, the pain, the itch, the swelling, they seem to have appeared on their own. But the origin was always the same. Heat, pressure, and the delicate tissue exposed to both at the same time. Once you understand this, something important becomes clear. It isn't only the habit itself that creates the problem, but the environment it creates inside the veins. Heat expands, pressure builds, muscle tension traps, digestion amplifies, and the body, unable to break this pattern alone, remains caught in a cycle of inflammation that feels impossible to escape. But the cycle can be broken, and when it breaks, everything changes. The veins drain more easily. The tissue regains strength. The mucosa begins to repair. The pelvic floor relaxes. The inflammation decreases naturally without creams or uncomfortable treatments, and all of this begins with a small decision in the shower. Before we move to that transformation, if this explanation is helping you understand your body in a new way, consider subscribing to Relief Health. These insights are meant to empower you, and the next part of this video will show exactly how this cycle becomes a daily loop. and how removing one habit can finally give your body the relief it's been trying to achieve for so long. What makes this habit so destructive isn't just the moment it happens in the shower. It's the chain of silent consequences that unfold long after the water stops running. Once the veins have swollen and the tissue has weakened, the body enters a state of vulnerability that lasts for hours. And because the shower is part of a daily routine, the damage becomes part of a daily cycle, one that prevents the area from healing, even when you try everything else to feel better. When you step out of the shower, the warmth remains trapped inside the inflamed veins. The tissue around them is still soft, still swollen, still recovering from the direct impact of the hot water. As soon as you dry the area with a towel, even gentle pressure becomes a source of friction. What would normally be harmless contact now irritates sensitive tissue that has lost its protective layer. This tiny irritation is enough to keep inflammation active, preventing the tissue from closing microlesions and restoring normal circulation. Then comes the pressure of sitting. Whether you sit to get dressed, sit for breakfast, sit to work, or sit during your commute, the entire weight of your body presses downward onto the same delicate region that was overwhelmed minutes earlier. The swollen veins, still struggling to drain, are compressed. Blood flow decreases even more. Circulation becomes sluggish. The inflammation that began in the shower now spreads deeper, as if the tissue is sinking into the pressure instead of recovering from it. Your pelvic floor reacts to this automatically. It tightens not because you choose to tighten it, but because the body senses vulnerability and tries to create support. But this tension becomes another layer of restriction. When the muscles tighten, they narrow the space inside the pelvic region, making it harder for blood to move freely. Instead of draining, the blood becomes trapped. Instead of relaxing, the veins stretch further. Instead of calming down, the region becomes more irritated. As the morning continues, your digestive system wakes up. Blood shifts to the abdomen as your body prepares for food, even if you haven't eaten yet. This natural shift slightly increases internal temperature, pressure, and movement inside the intestines. Normally, none of this would cause any discomfort, but when the veins are already inflamed, these small internal changes become noticeable. You might feel a heaviness, a fullness, a dull ache, or a sensation of heat in the area without understanding why. It isn't the food. It isn't digestion itself. It's the inflammation that began hours earlier, feeding off every new stimulus. Then comes the bowel movement. If your stool is slightly harder than usual, something that happens easily with stress, dehydration, or diet, the friction interacts directly with the sensitive tissue. Even a normal bowel movement can cause discomfort because the mucosa is still recovering from the shower. But if there is any strain, pressure, or dryness, the effect becomes stronger. The swollen veins are compressed even more. The weakened tissue stretches, microtears deepen, and the inflammation that was already active becomes reinforced. This is why the pain that appears later in the day feels so disproportionate. It doesn't feel like a simple irritation. It feels like something has been building, and that's exactly what happens. Hour after hour, without you noticing, each part of your day amplifies the consequences of that one moment in the shower. The tissue tries to repair itself, but before it makes real progress, sitting irritates it again. Walking creates friction. Digestion increases internal pressure. Bowel movements stretch the tissue, and by the time night comes, the area is more inflamed than when the day began. At night, many people try creams or ointments to soothe the discomfort. Some seek cold compresses, warm baths, or medicated wipes, hoping to reduce the swelling enough to sleep comfortably. And for a moment, there might be relief. But because the underlying trigger reappears in the next shower, the body never gets a full night of recovery. It starts the next day already irritated, already sensitive, already swollen, and with the same habit waiting to restart the cycle all over again. This is why so many people feel like their hemorrhoids never truly heal. It's not that they are doing something wrong throughout the day. It's not that their body is failing. It's that the cycle begins again every time the shower water hits a region that can no longer handle that level of heat and pressure. Even when diet improves, hydration increases, and lifestyle changes are made, the tissue simply does not get the uninterrupted time it needs to calm down and rebuild. And that's the real challenge. As long as the habit continues, the inflammation will always return. As soon as the cycle is broken, even for a few days, the improvement becomes undeniable. The swelling decreases, the discomfort fades, the burning sensation lessens, the pressure eases, the pelvic floor relaxes, and suddenly the body begins to behave as if it has been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Now that this cycle is clear, the next part reveals why stopping this habit allows the body to recover with surprising speed, and how a small change in the shower can shift your entire day from a pattern of irritation to one of healing. When you finally remove this habit from your routine, something remarkable begins to happen inside your body. Something that most people don't expect, because they've spent so long living in a cycle of irritation that the idea of real improvement feels out of reach. But the truth is that the area responds quickly once it's no longer being overwhelmed every single day. The moment the direct stream of hot water is no longer hitting the tissue, your body begins resetting processes that have been trapped in a loop for weeks, months, or even years. Inside the veins, the first thing to change is pressure. Without the sudden surge of heat and force from the shower, the vessels don't expand aggressively. They remain closer to their natural diameter, allowing blood to circulate more evenly instead of collecting in one congested area. This alone reduces the heaviness that usually appears after a shower. And with less pressure on the walls of the veins, the tissue around them no longer stretches beyond its limit. It begins to settle. It begins to calm. It begins to heal. The mucosa, which was constantly stripped of its protective barrier by the hot water, also starts to recover. The thin layer of moisture that shields the tissue from friction returns naturally when it's no longer being dissolved every morning or night. This layer is essential for comfort during bowel movements, walking, sitting, and even subtle changes in posture. As it rebuilds, the tissue becomes more resilient. It stops reacting to every small movement. The sensitivity decreases, the burning fades, the irritation softens, and then the inflammation, the part that felt like it would never end, finally begins to shrink. Blood flow improves, fresh oxygen reaches the tissue, the swelling drains more easily, the nerves become less reactive. The pelvic floor, no longer alarmed by the constant irritation, starts to relax. This relaxation alone reduces internal pressure significantly, allowing the veins to decompress instead of tightening deeper into the pelvis. What felt like a constant internal tension becomes something lighter, calmer, quieter. All of this happens not because you added something new to your routine, but because you removed the one trigger that was reopening the wound day after day. Suddenly your body doesn't have to fight the same battle every morning. It doesn't have to compensate for the same injury. It doesn't have to manage inflammation that never had a chance to cool down. And with that burden lifted, your body does exactly what it was designed to do: restore balance, repair tissue, and recover naturally. What surprises many people is how quickly the improvement becomes noticeable. Some begin to feel relief after just a few days, without the direct stream of hot water. Others notice that the swelling that used to last all day begins to fade hours after waking. Bowel movements become smoother. The discomfort that showed up every afternoon becomes less frequent. The burning that lingered at night disappears slowly until it's gone. Even digestion feels less heavy because the pelvic floor isn't locked in protective tension anymore. And as this process continues, you realize something important. The pain was never random. The inflammation was never hopeless. The symptoms were not a sign that your body was broken or aging or failing. They were simply the response to a stimulus that the tissue could not handle. A stimulus that felt harmless but was triggering a chain reaction you couldn't see. When you remove the trigger, the reaction stops. When you stop the habit, the pattern breaks. When the body is given time, truly given time, it recovers. And once you experience that recovery, the shower becomes a different place. It becomes relaxing again, safe again, comfortable again. You no longer feel the need to aim hot water at the area because you now understand what your body has been trying to tell you all this time. You give the region the gentleness it needs. And the reward is relief, real relief. The kind that doesn't fade after a few hours but stays with you throughout the day. If this video helped you understand what's been happening inside your body and why your symptoms kept returning, I invite you to subscribe to Relief Health. Your body has its own language, and the more you learn to listen to it, the more control you gain over your comfort, your digestion, and your well-being. There is so much more we can explore together, and every small change brings you closer to the relief you've been looking for. You don't need to fight your body. You just need to stop hurting it without realizing it. And sometimes, that change begins with something as simple as the way you shower.